When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
Publishing in general, a city magazine, and then these other magazines we do are what we would call niche publishing. So they never really took the dive that daily newspapers did. They live in their own world. We can talk about timely subjects, but also we have a lot of information in there. It doesn't have to be out first. And it's a little bit of a raw piece of each city.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Galores. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Todd Lemke. Todd is the publisher and owner of Omaha Magazine LTD, providing award-winning lifestyle content in Omaha, Nebraska. Todd, thank you for joining me. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So I was just giving you some of my background. As most true journalists tend to do when they come on here, they start asking me about myself too. But I'd love to hear about you and your background and your story in local media for myself and the audience. Could you give me a breakdown?
I'll give you a quick one. Went to school at Lincoln, University of Nebraska at Lincoln, had a journalism degree. But when I got out of school, I sold real estate. And believe it or not, these are times when real estate was 16, 17% to buy a home. That was the mortgage amount. And I did very well because I sold to other young people. We just didn't know any better.
Right.
But I would advertise largely to young people, meaning I would advertise in this bar magazine, and that would attract a lot of people for me. And anyway, they found out I had a journalism degree, so they sold me the bar magazine. And back then it was called City Slicker. So this goes back to 1983. So I did it as a hobby, and then after a year, I canceled or got rid of that and then started Omaha Today. And then it got to the point where I had to choose, do I want to do real estate or be in the magazine world? And so I probably chose the wrong one. I went to the magazine world. And at the time, there was an Omaha Magazine, but it went out of business. So I strictly just went down, paid $100 to the state, and secured the name. So that's how Omaha Magazine got started. That was probably around, at that point, 87, I believe, is when we officially took over the name Omaha Magazine.
That's great. And could you tell me a little bit about what's the company looks like now? Because I think it's more than just Omaha Magazine, right? There's some sister publications. Correct. You have a real nice web presence. Talk a little bit what it looks like now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, in our business, especially local city magazines, you really need multiple sources of revenue. And we started out, we were hiring freelance people to do the writing, for doing the design, those type of things. And we caught on real quick, you need a certain volume to be able to bring that in-house. And so we started doing custom publishing. And that has really been kind of a backbone for us. I would say we probably do 20 different custom publishing jobs today. And what I mean by custom publishing, these are magazines for other people. And so sometimes we'll take the risk. Sometimes the client takes the risk of the financial side of things. But what that did, that gave me time to grow my city magazine. And now we're subscription-based. And we have, it's really nice when the economy changes and stuff to have another source of revenue. I was at a seminar the other day, Paul, and he had a great way of explaining it. He says, you have your storefront, but you got to have a meth lab in the back room. And I thought about that. And the most successful city magazines obviously are making a margin, making income from several different methods. Ours, obviously, we do digital, and you do video and do other things. But I think the key for us early on was to do custom publishing.
That's great. And I'm curious. So it goes back to the 80s, I think, when you first kind of got the magazine. Very different
Yes.
landscape. I'm sure it was probably just a magazine then. Like I said, everything's digital, everything's all that now. You survived through the last 20 years when the crazy internet wave and everything. Could you talk a little bit about how the business has changed over those years in terms of, like you said, you need more source of revenue, and just talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. There is no doubt that in today's world, there's a lot of pressure on what we call print display ads.
Mm-hmm.
So again, looking for multiple sources. But what the print did for us on a financial side is give us credibility. So because we have the trust of the public of being able to produce a quality magazine, they trust us to do their publications. But to answer your question more specifically, when I got in the business, we used typesetting machines. And so think of a typesetting machine as like a long conference room table. That was about the size of it. And you had galley type, and you had to paste it on the boards, and then you had to make film. All that was very time and labor intensive. But what it did do, there was a threshold. That machine was about $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
And, back in the early 80s, that was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a threshold to keep people out of your business. Today, you have a laptop computer, you're in the publishing business. And so it has greatly changed the entry level and the technology side of things.
Yep, that is the struggle these days, the barrier to entry that it used to have. $150,000 in the 80s for a machine. That's probably more than some of the real estate you were selling, I would imagine.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Shoot. I was telling you about I was selling the first time buyers. And back then you could buy a house, one car, nice split entry for about $60,000. Today that same house is probably close to $200,000.
Yeah, that's like a kitchen renovation these days.
Right.
$60,000. So like we said, you started in Omaha. And I was saying before we recorded, I wanted to ask you about this because I kind of live in the same region. I have not had anybody from Omaha on. Could you talk a little bit about just your area, the reporting, what it's like serving that community, what the business landscape's like? I know from the business landscape, I think of Warren Buffett, but I don't know a whole lot else about Omaha. So I'd like to kind of hear from you.
Well, thank you. It's known, obviously, in the financial world with Warren Buffett, who did just retire. But we also have UP's Railroad's headquarters here. We also have Mutual of Omaha. We had ConAgra up until just recently, a couple of years ago. They ended up moving their headquarters to Chicago. But what is unique about Omaha is the partnership between government and what I call the leaders of Omaha. So we've been blessed in that a lot of people that invested in Warren Buffett early on did well, and they're giving back to the community. And so a lot of times if there's projects that the city wants to do, they'll get it partially funded by leaders of Omaha, which is really kind of a neat thing to see. Omaha itself just went over the metro area, just went over 1 million population, which you got to remember the state itself is like 2.2, 2.3 million. So the bulk of the people obviously live in the Omaha metro area. We also have a large Air Force base, which I think helps the economy. It helped our infrastructure. So they had unbelievable cabling. And so Omaha was known for a long time for telemarketing because we had all the infrastructure to be able to handle that because of Offutt Air Force Base. It was also at one time the largest producer of cattle and the Omaha stockyards. Today, Nebraska is still the largest producer of cattle overall of any state. So there's a really strong agricultural side. And a lot of companies obviously have a strong, even here in Omaha, they're related to the agriculture or to the military structure, which I think kind of gives us a solid base. But, I probably wouldn't have been able to start a magazine in a larger community. So I think growing with this community has really helped us out.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Welcome to your Peloton Pilates era. Trusted by over 2 million members, experienced instructors with true Pilates expertise, offering classes for every level. Choose from 10 to 45-minute sessions with little to no equipment. Anytime, anywhere. And with the cross-training swivel screen, you can move seamlessly from cardio to mat. Press Pilates. Small moves, big impact. Find out more at onepeloton.com/Pilates.
That's great. And, kind of in terms of, I should have asked this before. I went out of order, kind of. When you talked about having a storefront in the front and a meth lab in the back.
Yeah.
I had a guy on from Chicago recently at a new kind of startup. And the term he used was revenue promiscuity.
I love
he's
it.
going for a bunch of different sources. Like just, because a lot of people listening to this are on the business side publications. What is kind of ringing, you don't have to give me numbers, but what is like ringing the cash register? What are your kind of key revenue sources in
Well,
2026?
it's an old idea, but it's come more to the forefront. Publishing in general, a city magazine, and then these other magazines we do are what we would call niche publishing. So they never really took the dive that daily newspapers did. They live in their own world. We can talk about timely subjects, but also we have a lot of information in there. It doesn't have to be out first. And it's a little bit of a raw piece of each city. I'm trying to think where I was going with this, but so you were talking about the revenue side of things. So obviously that gives us our credibility. Then you're able, once you have a staff, you're able to do multi-titles. Like we have 5 of our own titles. And then, obviously the extra stuff. We recently have, when I say recently, in the last 5 years, gotten into digital. So we have a robust newsletter. Over 110,000 opted-in people on our newsletter. There's revenue there. We sell programmatic, kind of a vague term for selling ads that pop up on people. And I mentioned to you, we do video and what's photography. Some of the jobs we're doing, that's all they want to hire from us is a video or photography side of things. But anyway, I think I answered your question, but I may have gotten off topic, Paul. I'm sorry.
No, that's really interesting because I haven't had any... I don't think I've had a city magazine on. I've done alt weeklies. Most of the people are like local news,
Sure.
Like the photography is something I didn't even think about. I haven't really heard that, but that makes sense. If you have them on staff doing like, these beautiful like glossy magazines and everything, that's one I haven't heard before as a revenue source, but that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing that we sell is what's called a content box. So you hire our photographer/videographer for a half day or a full day. They go out and get a company assets. So assets meaning stuff they can use in their own marketing. So it's a combination of photographs and videos that they can use throughout the year. And anyway, that's just an example of a nice sale that we're able to add on to either existing advertisers or people that's all they want.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and it's almost like you have free marketing too, because people are looking at they're picking up your magazine, they're like, oh yeah, that's a no brainer to go with them. So, like I've touched on a few times, you kind of started back in the 80s as just a magazine with a typesetter and all that. You made the leap into digital and everything, and you talking about timely things. I have to ask everybody this question: like, what are your thoughts on AI? It's on everybody's tongue. Overall thought, it's a big question because it can mean a lot of things, but also just if you guys are using it, what your thoughts are, how you're using it, etc. How are you looking at it? We just had
what we call a traction meeting, and this subject came up. And so right now we're writing our AI rules because trying to dissimulate, because we still use quite a bit of freelance writing, how it's turned in, and then our own editor. So I'm going to come at it from a couple standpoints. One is to stay competitive, we are going to have to incorporate it. We do currently use it with our newsletter where we give it the parameters. It curates all the subject matter. We only come out twice a week, but it gives us the current subject matter because typically newsletters have to be a little more current. And it has helped with that. Caution, you still need a human to go over it. Our next phase is going to be to train specific duties in each department. So let's say it's the design department. We will teach them how to create their own AI agents so that they do the mundane task quicker. I try and coach them. Think of it as having an intern that you have to coach to do your mundane things. Our industry is very leery of it. You can imagine they think of it as replacing what they do. Personally, I think like an editor, they're going to be needed more than ever to the AI and make sure it's on track of what it was supposed to do, keep it narrow in the subject matter and also correct. Because there is some hallucination still, but I also am smart enough to know that if I don't embrace it, my competitors will, and their labor costs are going to be less than mine.
Yep. The term I've been throwing around that I stole from somewhere on this podcast and elsewhere is AI sandwich, is how most people are using it now. Whereas the human is the bread. You give it
Right.
the inputs, you let it do a lot of the busy work in the middle, and then you check it on the bottom. And I think that's how a lot of people are kind of going about it and actually using it, So I don't think it's directly going to take everybody's job or anything like that.
Not at this point anyway. And
No.
I was getting a little depressed, Paul, about this whole thing. It's kind of like Terminator stuff, this AI. And so I read this book called Abundance. And, in the world, there's about 1 billion people that are like really below the poverty level.
Mm-hmm.
And what technology is doing, it's bringing that last billion up in with everyone else. So what that's going to create is commerce, right? You already see it with the cell phone. There could be somebody in a village in Africa that is selling product off his cell phone. And so that if you use that as an example, that's what technology should do. It should create a better standard of living with less hours, labor hours for all of us. So the humans, I believe, are going to be the beneficiary of all this AI.
I agree. I'm of the same thinking. I don't know what you call it, an optimist. The abundance mindset. I totally agree. When you look at the big picture, I couldn't agree more. So I kind of ask everybody this, but flash forward 5 years. I usually ask about the local news industry, but you're not really a local news publisher. Where do you see yourself and Omaha Magazine 5 years from now?
Well, the city magazine itself, we take a lot of pride in it, and I mentioned it gives us our credibility. We're going to have to find additional income, even in print, outside of the city magazine. So we have a couple products that are very profitable for us. And the new term is native advertising, or you could call it, what did we used to call it? Advertorial.
Right,
But we like the word native better. And so like, for example, I actually go around teaching other magazines this, a product called Faces. So we do Faces of Omaha, Faces of Lincoln. And what Faces is every page is a profile on a person, and the book is 100% paid. The only thing not paid is the table of contents. So here we have an industry that we're very good at storytelling. We're very good with photography. We're very good with design. And now we created a print product that is very profitable. But that's just one small example of where I think things are going to have to go. I'm going to suggest you don't get rid of, like in my case, the city magazine, because that will always be your credibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's the way to do it. Just got to look at different, the reality is you have to have the viable business also underneath all of it. So, you've made it a long way. I think you'll be just fine with that mindset and the way you're embracing changes and everything like that. Todd, that's everything I had written down. Where can people find you online? What do you want me to link to or promote or shout out? Or anything like that? Yeah.
I think our website, omahamagazine.com, they're always more than happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. My name, Todd Lemke. Maybe put the word Omaha, but you'll find me. And I'd be more than happy to respond to people there.
Perfect. Yeah, that's where you and I met. So you can scroll down if you're listening and click on all that and find Todd and reach out. Todd, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on here. This is great. Great to meet. Great to hear about this. So thanks for taking the time out of your day.
Thanks for thinking of us. And by the way, you got to get to Omaha.
I know. I do. I really do.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.